Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by and welcome to the MBDA Virtual Substance Sandwiches webinar. My name is Gabriela Zambrano and I'm the director of the Houston MBDA Business Center. This is our 7th year of offering substance sandwiches, and this is the 4th virtual subs for 2021. During today's webinar, attendees will be in a listen-only mode. There will be a Q&A session at the end of today's call. My colleague, Mark Praigg, is going to monitor the Q&As. If you have any questions during the presentation, you may submit it online by entering it in the Q&A panel. As a reminder, this presentation is being recorded and the presentation will be available via email with the participants. Now, I'd like to introduce my colleagues, Mark Praigg and Deidre Sutton, Business Advisor, and Jessica Vasquez, Office Manager. Today, we have the pleasure to meet with McCarthy. This is how the event will go. McCarthy building companies will introduce themselves and then make a presentation. Then we'll break into questions and answers, and we'll have a hard stop at 12:30. And now I'll turn things over to Adrienne Williams, Director of the Supplier and Community Outreach for the Southern Region. Adrienne?
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much. Definitely want to thank Houston MBDA for the opportunity to allow me to be here for us to be able to present and share some information with you today. So as you mentioned, I'm Adrienne Williams, Director for Diversity and Community Outreach for the Southern Region. So I primarily oversee our diversity inclusion efforts in Texas, as well as our office in Atlanta. I want to also introduce our McCarthy team that's with us today for the presentation. We have Judah Auld. He's our Vice President of Pre-Construction and oversees our commercial pre-construction group in Texas. We also have presenting today Adeel Malik. He's Vice President of Estimating and oversees our heavy civil and marine and industrial group in Houston. And we also have Kim Williams, not presenting, but a very strong part of our team as well. She's the estimating assistant and is responsible for our supporting and assisting our diversity inclusion team. As I mentioned, she's also on the call as well, just to make sure we keep it all together. Next slide. So without further ado, again, our agenda of the things that we'll cover and spend a little time talking through on the slides before us. Again, introductions, which have been done. Talk a little bit about McCarthy as a company and doing business with McCarthy Building. Our commitment to diversity and inclusion. We'll briefly touch base and talk about the pre-qualification process. And then, of course, what most of you wanted to hear, we'll definitely go through some of our upcoming project pursuits as our agenda for today. I am one of the newest members of the team. I've been here for a little less than a month at this point, but for the next couple of slides, at this point in our presentation, I am going to turn it over to Judah.
Thanks, Adrienne. So a little bit about McCarthy, some quick facts here. We're exceptionally financially healthy. We've been around for 150 years, so strong company. We've been doing work in Houston for over 30 years, and we came here with a full office about 10, 11 years ago now. We have 2 offices actually in Houston, one in the Greenway Plaza area and one out in Channelview to support our marine and heavy civil operations over there. We're a true community builder. We really like helping and serving the communities we're in, so we want to get involved with local subcontractors, and we have a big initiative to give back to the communities that we're in through different charities and organizations. As you'll see on the next slide, we have a wide range of projects, and so this is kind of what makes up our mix of projects. Obviously, the big red bar, we are the nation's #3 healthcare builder, so that's kind of what makes up a lot of what we do across the country as well is here in Houston. But you see a large, higher education, commercial, and then we're very diverse. That Adeel's going to show you. We do a lot of solar and treatment plants and marine work, and we do a lot of different things. So we're just a very diverse company across the region as well as the country. And then lastly, to touch on the next slide, these are just the offices that we have across the United States. So we're broken up into 5 regions: Southern California, Northern Pacific, the Southwest region, our Central region, and the region we represent is the Southern region. So as I mentioned, we have 2 offices here, Houston and Channelview. Then we have an office up in Dallas and an office over in Atlanta, and we cover that big swath of essentially the Southern United States there. And we try to stay close to our offices within 100 miles, but we definitely do projects that cover that whole territory, from solar, water projects, water treatment projects, and other projects that fall into that range. Was this me or was this you, Adrienne? You're on mute, Adrienne.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. All right, technical difficulties. So thank you, Judah, for sharing a little bit about our markets and our regions. So we'll now kind of transition and talk a little bit more about diversity and inclusion, and our approach and efforts as a company and opportunities that we have as well. So going into that, of course, you see on the slide, I've already introduced myself, but just to revisit that again, I am the Director of Diversity for the Southern region for McCarthy. You will also see, I introduced earlier, Kim Williams, who is also a part of our team. But want to move beyond the nice 2 beautiful pictures and share that we also have a team of inclusion champions. I'm really excited about that because it goes beyond just having a person or being a team of 1 or a team of 2. And so we have a great group of folks in leadership and some of our business unit leaders there in the Houston area to support diversity and inclusion events and activities. You'll see the second name being Judah, who's on the call. So again, it's beyond just having a diversity representative at any given event. We certainly try to include our inclusion champions as much as possible to engage in the process and in local events and activities in the community as well. Next slide. So talking a little bit about our culture of inclusion and what that looks like. Again, you've heard briefly from Judah, and he's going to present more in detail from our pre-construction team. But we also want to make sure that we're working with new firms that maybe we haven't worked with in the past, and identify opportunities of areas where new or smaller firms can grow, but also looking to make sure we engage, and we'll talk through that about how to get involved in that process. We have a strong leadership commitment from our team, as well as the previous slide we talked about our inclusion champions, but that commitment also goes from our regional leadership all the way up to our corporate level of leadership for diversity and inclusion. Relationships are key to us. We certainly understand that construction is a relationship business and driven by relationships. And so we know that people like to work with who they know and folks that will perform well. So not only is having a relationship important to us, but we really want to make sure that that outreach is a part of building those relationships as we build projects in the area and build strong, lasting relationships with our trade partners and our subcontracting and supplier community. Equally, I'll touch base quickly on the community engagement. We are certainly sponsors and corporate partners in many organizations. Specifically, they're in the Houston area. We are members of NAMAC, partners strongly with the Houston MBDA. Thank you for inviting us back this year. For today's presentation, the Houston Supplier Minority Development Council, among others. So very involved in community engagement and activities and events in Houston. For capacity building, we recently started a couple of years ago a 10-month-long capacity building program. And that is something we're looking to roll out and have in the Houston area in the upcoming months. So we're currently looking at that, but we have started our capacity building program and had a kickoff for that program in 2019 here in Dallas. And then opportunity creators. This is just to enhance or highlight the fact that for every project, we're always looking for ways that we can continue to engage subcontractors, and again, new partners who may not currently be working with us to identify ways that they can identify work in the marketplace. Next slide. Our commitment. So every time, every project, we are committed to make sure that we are, again, reaching out to the local market. Even if there isn't, I guess, an assigned goal by the owner, we look to assign goals on our projects that may not have a set goal assigned by the owner. So that's something we look at and review and determine on a project by project basis. But again, that emphasis of meeting a goal and setting intention to include minority and diverse suppliers and subcontractors on all our jobs. We certainly look to meet or exceed those goals. When project goals are assigned, I always like to say the goal is the floor and not the ceiling. So that's something we work on as well. We facilitate introductions and networking with large primes and diverse firms. I'm very passionate about this in this area. So again, definitely as a company, we're making sure that we're doing providing access and opportunities for subcontracting, but also making sure that our first tier or any tier that may not be a non-certified firm, that they are also looking to do that same level of effort and include participation at all tiers on the project. And certainly being a resource and an advocate, part of our efforts here today, and excited about that and sharing and making sure we're doing our part to provide access and opportunities again to available and upcoming project opportunities, which we'll also talk about as well. Next slide. So again, just bringing home and embracing inclusion on projects. So again, touched a little bit about non-certified businesses and equally having some of our trade partners and first tiers engage in diverse participation on projects. And we highly encourage that and do consider that as a part of our evaluation process as well. Again, having a quality inclusion plan is certainly important and a part of our selection process. And all partners must demonstrate inclusive behavior on site. We do have a zero tolerance policy. Next slide. And certainly last but not least, I'll touch base briefly about our pre-qual process. Like many, maybe most or many of the general contractors, we do have a pre-qualification process. We have Kim Williams, who's on the call, who's very helpful in helping you coordinate and walk through that process if need be. There are, one example is sometimes there are things in the pre-qual process like audited financials, which many small businesses or most haven't done. Or it may be too costly where that's just not a part of where you are in scaling your business, but there are other alternative options that we have. So if you have any questions about the pre-qual process, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You'll see the contact on the slide for Jen Weeks. She is the immediate contact, but again, we do have support in that area with Kim or myself as well. That website, again, as you'll see on the slide, is prequalification.mccarthy.com. So we do want to encourage you to get pre-qualified with us. I like to say early and often to get going in that process in case there are any questions or issues along the way. But we're certainly here to support and help out in that area, getting through the pre-qual process as needed. And so with that, I will now turn it back over to Judah, who you heard from earlier, our VP of PRECON.
Well, and just to touch on the pre-qual, we definitely want you to go ahead and try to get pre-qual, but that is not a requirement to propose with us. So don't let that be a hindrance to start talking to us and get your proposals in while you're working through that process as well. So like Adrienne said, I head up the pre-construction for the commercial side of our business in Texas. And so I'm going to highlight our folks that are here in Houston, but we also have some folks up in Dallas. So if your firm works in another market and you want those contacts, we can make those available as well. So we've got Andrew Rupp and Jerry Grogan here in Houston that are both pre-construction directors for us. And I'll show you a couple jobs they're working on that you can make contact with them. if those line up for you. And then we also have Walker, Joey, and Robert, who head up a lot of workforce as well. And they're leading the work here as well. So those are all good guys to get to know, and they can inform you of kind of what's coming down the pipe. And on the next page, we'll kind of show you, we got some bigs and we got some small, and there's probably something in there in between for everyone. So a little bit about what we have going on the commercial side. We have an MOB with Methodist, and that's the quickest thing coming out. We're probably putting it out for bid end of June, early July, but it probably won't start until October. They need a board approval on that. This was, typical of a lot you're going to hear. This got put on hold because of COVID, and it finally came back, and so we're maybe getting to get started on this one. Jerry is the person heading that one up, and so if you want to find more about that job, it's about a $45 million project total. It's a medical office building, a garage, and then a couple of pedestrian bridges with it. So pretty nice little project. We have the Ismaili Cultural Center, which could get started in the near future, or could take a while. They're a very unusual group. They have international folks involved in this, as well as folks from Canada and and all over the U.S. And so they're just very cautious buyers. So we're working with them to try to get them comfortable with the numbers. And it is a lot of unusual products, and a lot of the stuff is being shipped in from international. So some of the opportunities on that are not as good as other projects we have, just because we're buying some stone from Turkey, and we got some millwork coming from Afghanistan. So it's a very unique project. But Walker McDonough knows everything there is to know about that job, and he could let you know if there's an opportunity on that one. Just announced within the last couple of weeks, Methodist is building a brand new campus up in Cypress, and Jerry's going to be the guy heading that up as well. And there's not much on that. We just got an SD package in on that. It's only a couple pages, mostly narratives, and so that opportunity is going to develop over this next 9 months or so, and we'll have a lot more information. We think the opportunity is going to break ground in the first or second quarter next year. So should be a nice large project. Good office tower with some renovation of some existing buildings up there. Just needs to develop a little further. And then we have what we call a specialized solutions group with various opportunities. Robert Odiambo heads that group up for us. And we do work from Methodist and Baylor and TCH at the Woodlands West Campus and in the Med Center. And those jobs can be anywhere from a couple $100,000 up to a couple million. And they pop up every single week. We get something new in, and we're always pricing something. And so there's a lot of opportunities. So Robert is a very good guy to get to know. He was also on that diversity and inclusion champion team that Adrienne showed. So he's at some of the events, and he's a good guy to get to know and keep in touch with, because there might be an opportunity there that could be small, could be large. It's just there's a lot of them. So that's a little bit what we have coming on in commercial.
I'm going to talk a little bit about our heavy civil, marine, and industrial team. So the way our civil team is kind of broken up, we've got a focus in Dallas that primarily looks at transportation work and heavy civil work. And then our Houston office is focusing primarily on marine and heavy industrial work. Anything that's along the Texas Gulf Coast kind of come out of the Houston office. Folks up in Dallas are led by Jeremy Shaw, he's Vice President of Estimating. And he's supported by Colleen as the estimating director and Ricardo Morales as estimating manager. Both of those folks have been with McCarthy for well over 10 years. Down here in Houston, I lead our estimating group, and supporting myself is Chuck Shive as estimating director and Keisha Vesudivan as estimating manager. Keshav is really our kind of go-to guy when it comes to marine work. So anything relating to Port of Houston or any sort of pile driving activities, if there's vendors out there that are steel pile suppliers, really get to know Keshav because he's the one that kind of leads our effort with any sort of piling or marine related opportunity. Next slide. So a little bit about some of the projects that we've got going on. So unlike our commercial partners, our PRECON effort usually has a very short fuse. Here recently in the beginning of the year, we picked up around $115 million worth of work, of which most of those opportunities have been subcontracted out. But we do have quite a few exciting opportunities with Port of Houston and then in some of the neighboring cities of Houston or around Houston, Port Arthur, Port of Beaumont. There's quite a few exciting projects coming up. So in the next couple of weeks, we're expecting the Port of Port Arthur Berth 6 project to come out. That job's slated to be around a $70-ish million project. There's going to be a lot of opportunities around concrete work, around pile driving, whether or pile supply. There's some dredging opportunities. If there's some firms out there that get involved with mechanical dredging, there's definitely some opportunities around dredging. And then there's a couple of specialty scopes around tie rod and soil nail anchors that are also part of those scopes. Along the same lines, Port of Houston has a $17 million project over at Manchester Terminal, Wharf 2. That job's slated to come out late Q3, as far as we know. And it's got similar scopes where it's going to have some concrete rehabilitation, some drill shafts instead of piles, and some minor dredging. Port of Beaumont, Main Street Terminal, that's the next large project. That's slated to be an $80 to $100 million project that's supposed to come out in early Q3 of this year. Again, the scopes are very similar to the previous wharfs where there's a lot of concrete rehab or new concrete work, some pile driving, pile suppliers, tie rods, so on and so forth. Moving beyond the wharfs, we've got a job for TxDOT down in Freeport, the FM 1495 bridge replacement over the Brazos River. That's slated to be about an $18 to $20 million project. So we anticipate there being drill shafts, concrete work, columns, bridge caps, deck panels. And again, that job, I believe, is slated to start up. It's going to have a pretty quick fuse for a startup. They're looking to start that job up in October. Rounding out some of the other work that we have, Port of Houston I should say, Port of Houston has another wharf job at the Turning Basin. This job is a follow-up to the Wharf 9 project that is currently being worked on right now. So our anticipation is that this job probably will come out for bid sometime late Q4 once the Wharf 9 project has been completed. I would say, I think the estimate on this job is probably around $10 million. And then again, it's going to revolve heavily around pile driving and concrete rehabilitation work. And then last but not least, we've got our Barry Rose water treatment plant down over in, that project has kind of slipped to the right a little bit. We originally were anticipating kind of being boots on the ground in summer timeframe. The client has elected to go with a different designer. And so the project's kind of slid to the right. We hope to kind of start getting subs and vendors engaged in the next 60 to 90 days. So if anyone out there kind of gets involved with any sort of process piping or is a supplier of pumps, valves, fittings, various instrumentation, keep an eye out for this project. We're looking to basically hit the community with this one, the subcontracting community, hit them hard with this one, probably Q3 into Q4. Beyond these projects, a lot of these projects are all public clients. The private sector in Houston kind of dipped a little bit in the marine and industrial workspace because of COVID. But here recently, the federal government has just recently approved funding the Port of Houston widening and deepening of the Houston Ship Channel. So that's a multi-billion-dollar project that's mostly revolved around dredging. There are some ancillary projects that are going to be a result of the big job that revolve around bulkhead replacements. But where we're going to see a lot of improvements are on the private sector, where there's going to be a lot of dock rehabilitations. There's going to be a lot of bulkhead improvements that are going to be necessary as a result of the widening and deepening of the Houston Ship Channel. So we kind of expect that as the port starts moving towards and starts getting some of the work built out for the large dredging job, that there'll be a lot of follow-up work behind it with the private clients. So we kind of expect some of that stuff to start hitting Q4 into next year. So just keep an eye out for a lot of the smaller private market work kind of coming to fruition here later on in the year. Next slide. So communication, how do we kind of get all the information to you all? So we use Building Connected. If you haven't registered on Building Connected, please do so. We publish all of our plans and specifications on Building Connected. We typically separate them out by various scopes that we're looking for pricing on. And, all of our communication, whether it's RFIs, addenda, any sort of notifications, Q&A as it relates to the bid, we're handling through Building Connected. So just please make sure that you're registered with Building Connected, that you've got valid emails as contacts for Building Connected, because we do send all the invites through Building Connected. One thing to make sure of, because Building Connected is a third-party company that we utilize, make sure that if you have some spam filters, sometimes there may be a tendency for an invite to go into your spam account. So just check your spam account every so often, because that has happened on occasion. I would just recommend that if you are finding it's hitting your spam account, to try to change that setting as it relates to Building Connected. So if there's any future correspondence as it relates to an addendum or an update or a Q&A, that you're getting the most up-to-date information, and that you're not kind of missing out on any of the documentation. Typically on Building Connected, we're also using that to communicate with our vendors or follow up with our vendors. So it's a good tool for us to be able to track the progress on various scope packages and track the participation. It's also a great tool, especially around diversity and inclusion, when we're looking at all of our minority, women-owned businesses, tracking their progress, tracking the communication that we're having, that we're doing with those folks. So if you haven't logged on or you're not signed up with Building Connected, please do so. It's free. It's a wonderful tool, and we absolutely love it, and we utilize it for everything. With that being said, that's pretty much our presentation with regards to the pre-con process. The pursuits that we've got in our pipeline right now, as well as the projects that we're working on. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to everyone to see if there's any questions that we can answer, as it relates to any of the items we discussed.
Thank you, Adeel. I think now is Mark's turn. Are you ready, Mark?
I'm ready. So our first question actually was answered by Judah. Our friend Anthony Curtis wanted Robert Odiambo's contact info, and Judah has typed it in.
Yeah, I forgot the H on the first one, so use the second one.
And I've had a pleasure of meeting Robert at AGC events. He's a great guy, real
Yeah.
asset to your firm. And is Gabriela, is the contact info up?
Oh, hold on a second. Let me look for the presentation. It's a little bit everywhere.
So it's spread throughout the presentation.
I can put Adrienne or Kim.
Okay. Let's see if we have more questions. Oh, when will the capacity building program go live? And how can I ensure that I receive the information?
I would say I would just email me. I'll be the point of contact and kind of placeholder until we, we're clear to kind of have a sense of when we're gonna roll that out. But if you email me, I will definitely stay in touch to make sure we send that information out to you once we determine when we'll go forward.
Okay. Hello, my name is Willie Smith IV, owner operator of Westside Logistics Incorporated. I'm a trucking company, 100% veteran owned and certified, located in Texas. I mainly ran pipe interstate from all the ports here in Houston. Since COVID, I've had to take a step back for my family's health and safety, but now I'm going into dump trucking. Please email me. Okay, so Willie is working his business, hustle, no problem with that. Are there ever any communication components in these types of projects? I assume that means low voltage.
Yeah, so a lot of the work that we pursue on the Port of Houston, primarily on the container yard side, there is a high voltage or medium voltage component, and then there is a low voltage communication / fiber optic side that we see. 9 out of 10 times we're typically having the electrician perform that work, and so they are typically the ones that are, if they're not performing it or if they're not self-performing it, they're typically hiring out. So some of the firms that have been utilized in the past have been Triumph Cabling. I think Genesis may have done a project, so there have been some small businesses that have been utilized in the past for that type of work, but we're always looking at adding new companies. So if someone is in low voltage wiring, especially as it relates to some of those container yards, or if you're involved in civil work, we're always looking for new companies in that front.
And for commercial, I would say that, hospitals especially, it's becoming a larger and larger scope. And we typically are breaking those scopes out. But it's usually driven by the owner requirements. So they'll want Siemens or whoever they have on their other campuses. And so we're just going out to those particular vendors, and we definitely are looking to solicit those proposals on it. You pretty much can't find a commercial job without some form of low voltage scopes, and usually multiple forms of low voltage scopes. So definitely needing those in a lot of our projects.
What estimating tool is recommended for a small construction company?
I would use Excel.
Okay.
A lot of the estimating tools, I haven't seen something good that you can buy on a small scale. And a lot of the big tools that we buy are very, very pricey. And then we end up paying a third party to customize them for us. And so it's a heavy investment that we're able to do because we are so large and we have so many people using them. So it works out. I see a lot of folks develop really good estimating tools in Excel, and frankly, we still use Excel for quite a bit of the work that we do. Even though we're a large firm, we build some advanced Excel sheets and use them quite often still. So
Yeah, the only matter I would have is just, from a pricing perspective, Excel is definitely what you'd want to utilize. But from a takeoff perspective, maybe try to utilize Bluebeam. We use Bluebeam predominantly for our takeoffs. We have used on-screen takeoff as well. Either one of those two programs is really good. They do provide for collaboration, so it may make life a little bit easier if you're able to kind of collaborate with the general contractor or various other subs that have similar scopes, or that there may be some potential gaps in scopes on, to be able to coordinate through that. And either one of those two programs is not overly pricey. So from a takeoff perspective, either Bluebeam or on-screen takeoff.
Are there any standard or common specs of pipe piles that you purchase, or is it all driven by the specific project?
It's primarily driven by the specific project, but I would say that about 75% of the material we typically buy is an A252 grade 3 steel spec. That's kind of your standard steel pipe pile specification. Now there are one-offs that we see here recently. We finished a job that had about 10,000 tons of an A690 steel specification, so they do vary. Traditionally speaking, I would say your A252 grade 3 is our most common pipe pile spec, and then there may be various coding requirements that are necessary that the specifications would dictate.
Well, we do a lot of restoration work, floors, textiles, furniture, etc., and construction cleanup. Who would be the best contact for this?
I would say somebody in my group. I mean, that's more going to fall under us. I would tell you, we don't get into a lot of restoration work. A lot of what we do is new build. Occasionally we do, we'll do renovations, but when we get called in, it's usually to tear out the space and build something new. We don't get into a lot of restoration work. It's just the work mix that we're in. But it would be contacting somebody like Robert. He does a lot of that renovation work. And so if there is a piece, it would be, informing him of the kind of work you do, and letting him know that, that's something that you guys do.
Who would be in charge of purchasing barricades, traffic bumps, etc.?
So typically when we're purchasing traffic control related items, I mean, it's done on a project on a site level. If it's a pretty large purchase, then our estimating group will typically purchase it. And that, I mean, most of the traffic control related jobs are kind of headed out of our Dallas office, but it would be a combination of either our Dallas civil group or our Houston civil group. So if you need a contact person, reach out to me first, and I'll help point you in the right direction based upon the volume that's being purchased and the project that's being purchased for.
Are there any opportunities for professional services to include administrative support, certified payroll, or compliance?
I mean, we typically self-perform, or we typically have like a project admin dedicated to every project. So and they're typically handling all of those works. If there's scheduling involved, we do all of the scheduling in-house. That being said, I mean, there are occasions where we look at some third-party inspections, or they could be engineering. So if the breadth involves a little bit more than just the administration side, if you do get involved with even if it's just say managing of contaminated materials, something that we've subcontracted in the past. So that is kind of a specialized item. If someone gets involved with that, that is something we're looking at. But general administrative duties, typically we're kind of handling it all on the project level, in-house.
And did Adeel say Blue Beam and on-screen takeoff? Was that the two programs you mentioned, Adeel?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Same as on-screen takeoff.
Who is the contact for environmental issues? This is a client of ours, environmental consulting assessments for remediation.
We do have a environmental contact that I believe is out of our California office. I do not have her name handy with us right now, but it is definitely something we can provide as a follow-up. Mark, if you don't mind getting that person's contact information, we can provide that.
Okay. We sell premium construction materials. Who should we reach out to for procurement opportunities? And she, the same person asks, no, that was one question. Premium construction materials, who should they reach out to?
Yeah, sounds a little vague with premium construction materials. I'm not exactly sure what they're, I mean.
Yeah, it depends on the material. I mean, some of the materials they may be selling, they need to be reaching out to the subcontractor to sell it to them. And then, you know, we would solicit the subcontractor's bid. Some of those materials we might buy direct. So we just need to know more about what materials they're selling.
Do you all purchase or rent cranes or excavators, and who would be the contact?
Yeah, so we do both. We purchase and rent both excavators, cranes, any sort of yellow iron. Bart, B-A-R-T, last name Eberle, E-B-E-R-L-E. Bart is our director of yard operations. He sits in our Channel View office, would be the first point of contact as it relates to a purchase of a piece of equipment. As far as rentals are concerned, we primarily handle rentals on a project site level. So if there is a project that you're close to, reach out to me and I'll kind of help point you in the right direction with regards to who's the most effective person to reach out to so you can get your pricing to us for various pieces of equipment. That being said, during bid time frame, we do ask for vendors to price up and give us rental rates on various pieces of equipment. So please get with me as well so that we have your rental rates, or we can get your rental rates for various projects that we're pursuing.
This firm provides review of electrical systems on commercial construction drawings, specializing in healthcare. Is that a service that you would utilize a subcontractor for?
Yes. So on any design build work that we do, and or certain risky jobs or, you know, risky conditions, we will hire a third-party engineer to review the engineer record and just make sure everybody's seeing the same thing. And so it just kind of depends. We haven't had to do that in a little while, but I've definitely done it over the course of my career. And so, yeah, we'll solicit proposals from a couple different engineering firms and get a third-party recommendation on if that is appropriate. So you could go a couple years and not have any quotes, and then you could go a year and we use you 3 times. So it just kind of depends on what we're doing.
This is a firm that's asking about how to get on your bidding list. Adeel, I think you addressed that, or Judah, with Building Connected. Is that correct? That's the way to get on a bidding list.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, get yourself set up and building connected, and then just shoot us an email as well so that we have your contact information and we can make sure to include you as we are setting up the projects and getting ready to push it out through through building connected.
Have you had or expect to see projects that specify installing UVC building sanitizing in HVAC systems, given the issue with mitigating the spread of COVID?
I have not. I'm in the middle of a hospital design right now, and they're not changing their system to do anything different. But the hospital won't be open for another 2 or 3 years, so there's time to react as we continue to build the project and either incorporate different features or stay the course. They are incorporating other things that they've found through the process of COVID, which is kind of interesting to watch what we've learned and what they are incorporating. But so far, they haven't really changed their HVAC design for air intake or air changes or filtering.
I have a question. We've reached the end of our participant questions. What separates a successful subcontractor with McCarthy from one who struggles? Judith, would you feel comfortable addressing that?
Yeah, I mean, so I think Adrienne kind of talked about this a little bit, but like, we get a lot of proposals. So I think, trying to make connections with people like Robert Odiambo and the other folks to make sure that your proposal is not just, a piece of paper with a name on it, but they actually kind of know who you are and what you're about. That really helps. Just, put a name with a face and they go, wow, this guy's really low or this guy's really high or, whatever, that really helps. And then, for us, it's really about performance on the job. So, when you get out there and you really knock it out of the park and you have a really successful job, you show up with good manpower, you do quality work, gets done right the first time, our superintendents hold a heavy weight in, who they want to see on the job and how we select subcontractors. It's, and that's very important to us, and it affects who we ask back on the next, project if there's a select bid list. And so, the folks who do well in that environment are going to do well with us. And so that's really important to not just get low and have a low number and then shortchange the job, but really knock it out of the park for us.
Yeah, I'd like to add just something else to add on to that is just safety. We've got a very high standard for safety, and there are times where if a subcontractor has had a poor safety record from a previous project, we will move on to the next subcontractor regardless of what their price is. Safety is paramount to us. Making sure everyone goes home is by far our #1 priority. And first and foremost, we're going to stress safety. So ensuring that our subcontractors are on board and have the same commitment to safety as we do is of key importance to us.
And with that, Gabriela, we're at the end of our participant questions. Do you have anything in chat you want to address?
No, nobody has actually written to me, just one client that had an issue with that video, but the questions was answered. But I want to thank the entire McCarthy team for being here. For those people who want contact information, want to follow up, feel free to send an email to Adrienne. I'm sure she's gonna redirect your email to the right person, okay? Or send us an email at mbda@atcs.edu, and then we'll forward it to our McCarthy colleagues. But thank you so much, Adrienne, Judah, Adeel. Any last words?
Yeah, just one last thing that I'd like to add. I've kind of worked for a smaller company in the past, and something that I would stress, as you're working through proposals, You know, communication and connection are probably the two most important things. And as you know, don't be afraid to reach out to the various project leads that we have on our, you know, on our pre-construction side to get feedback on how the numbers look. We may not be able to give an exact number if you're not the low bidder, but we can give a ballpark, and hopefully that helps on the next project and to kind of get you to where the market is moving in that direction too. So please, you know, reach out. We may not always be able to give the exact number, but we'll try our best to give a range. And, you know, we try to hold true to the integrity of the process, but we also want to be able to provide the support and the help so that everyone's kind of moving in the right direction and folks aren't just spending time and spinning their wheels.
Okay. Well, I think we're good, don't you, Gabriela?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you so much, everyone who joined again, and then we appreciate it. Hopefully next year we'll have McCarthy in person, since things are getting back to normal, or we'll do another online, whichever. I know my friend, I'm not gonna say her name, she likes the online version, but thank you so much, everyone. Have a very good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.